Hey everybody, so it's Monday morning, September 22nd, 2025. It's another day of driving Uber. I'm just getting started. I have a reservation ride this morning. I drove a little bit over the weekend, and I gotta say I was thoroughly unimpressed with the rides and the prices that Uber was throwing out there this weekend. I just don't get it. I don't understand what Uber thinks it's accomplishing. Sure, it may be making money, but I think for the long term, it's hurting their brand. It's hurting the company. When you're paying people 88, 94 cents a mile to drive, and between the mileage to go and pick that passenger up and then do the trip, you're below what the federal government says it costs you to drive, which is 70 cents a mile, or within a 10-cent margin of that 70 cents, which is rare, by the way. Usually, by the time you calculate, for me at least, by the time I calculate, the distance to pick the passenger up and the ride itself, I'm usually right around 54 to 68 cents a mile. Doesn't leave you any room to pay taxes. It doesn't leave you any room to pay Social Security. And that's the big one. If we're not paying Social Security, what are we all going to do when we're 64, 62, 64 years old? If you don't have any Social Security in there, you're going to be in some deep trouble. But Uber does not pay us enough to even pay that. So at the end of the day, my question is how are all these, how's the federal government allowing this to happen? How are all these state and city and municipalities allowing this to happen? It's kind of ridiculous. I don't want to use the term slave labor, because I feel like that is a little bit disrespectful. But if we're paying you to do the trips, Uber and Lyft, how is it not? And the problem is I don't think a lot of people even bother to do the math. I don't have a clue how these people who are renting cars are making any kind of money, because my God, I know a couple of them, and they are spending so much time. It's ridiculous how much time they spend in their cars, and they're sitting in their cars at the airport. The people I know that they mainly drive the airport, they're in their cars at a minimum 12 to 14 hours a day. I know two that sleep in their cars. They actually have a little setup where they sleep in their cars, and for a lack of a better term, they bathe at the airport. They wash their underarms, they wash their feet, they have cologne bottles, they brush their teeth, do all that at the airport. And one of them has a family. The one guy I know that I talk to quite frequently, he has a family. He's got a wife and two daughters, and they're young. I think they're below teenage years. I would probably guess like 8 to 12, something like that. And the man is at the airport 7 days a week for a minimum of 12 hours, but he's usually there, from what he's told me, usually 14 or 15 hours. He'll go home to eat and shower, a real shower, once a day. And he might take a nap for a couple hours. And then he's right back out at the airport. I just don't understand it. If Uber and Lyft are doing that to people, and it's partially the passengers' fault also. The passengers, they want these low prices, but hey, at the end of the day, if both Uber and Lyft were forced to pay drivers more through some type of legislation, if they were forced to pay drivers more, then they would raise the rates on what passengers are being charged, or they would take less themselves. Like recently I did the math on what Uber was charging me for commercial insurance, and I think it was, if I did 10 trips a day, 6 days a week, it was coming out to like $1,200 to $1,400 a month in commercial insurance. Well, I've driven Uber Black, and I've had my own for hire commercial insurance, and it was nowhere near that price. I paid $326 and some odd cents. Ooh, that sun is bright. $326 and change a month is what I paid. So for them to turn around and tell me that it's costing $1,200 to give me insurance, come on now. What you're really doing, and it wouldn't surprise me, I would love to see if this was the case, but I'm wondering if wrapped up inside that insurance fee is a service fee that Uber and Lyft charges us, for managing our insurance policies. Now, I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but it wouldn't surprise me to find out that that's what they're doing, because that does happen. That does happen quite frequently with different companies, how they find a way to really, for lack of a better term, stick it to the employee or the driver or whatever it may be. So, that being said, and just like you guys and girls, I'm back out here today doing this. I'll do it until about 1:30, 2 o'clock, at which point I'll go and pick my kid up from school and call it a day. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a really good ride and I can let everybody know about it, and that would be wonderful. But something tells me it's going to be no different than any other day driving with Uber and Lyft. So until then, y'all have a great day, and I'll be posting another video soon. See ya.